When I think about change, real, lasting change, it never begins with silence. It begins with a voice, and not always a loud one, not always one in the spotlight or coming from a grand stage. Sometimes it starts with a whisper. Sometimes it's just a child sitting in the corner of a room asking to be seen, asking to be heard. Every child has a voice, but not every child has someone to listen. That's where the problem begins, and that's where we come in. See, there's this idea that you need power to make a difference, that to speak up, you've got to be someone important. But the truth is, there's power in simply caring, there's power in empathy, there's incredible power in using your voice to lift someone else's. I've met children who have seen more pain than most of us will see in a lifetime. Children who've lived through war, children forced to leave their homes, their families, children working instead of learning, children who are hungry, not just for food, but for hope, and still they have something to say. Their voices are filled with stories, with dreams, with strength. I remember once sitting in a small classroom that had only 4 walls, a blackboard, and a roof patched with metal sheets. No fancy technology, no bookshelves, but it was full of kids, each one determined to learn. One boy, maybe 10 years old, raised his hand and asked me, "Do people know we want to go to school?" That question stuck with me because beneath it was something deeper. It wasn't just about education, it was about recognition, about being acknowledged, about knowing that your voice matters. Even if you're 10 years old in a country far away from the cameras, we're quick to listen to politicians, to celebrities, to people with platforms. But what about the child standing alone in a refugee camp? What about the little girl walking miles to get clean water? What about the boy working in the fields when he should be kicking a football, laughing, going to school? Their voices matter just as much, maybe even more. But here's the thing, if no one listens, their voices fade, they grow quiet, they start to believe they don't matter. And that's the most heartbreaking part. We can't allow silence to shape the world these children grow up in. I can't let their struggles go unnoticed because the noise of the world is louder. Every time we choose to speak for them, every time we share their stories, raise awareness, or support causes that protect their rights, we're saying, you are not forgotten. Your voice counts. It's easy to feel small in the face of global issues. It's easy to think, what can I really do? But your voice can reach places your feet never will. It can cross borders. It can challenge injustice. It can create conversations that lead to action. We live in a time where a message, a post, a video, a single sentence can be seen by millions. Why not use that reach to speak for those still waiting to be heard? Sometimes I wonder what would happen if more people used their voices, not for fame, not for likes, but to fight for someone who has none. Because when enough voices come together, they become a force, and no government, no system, no injustice can ignore the sound of collective compassion. That boy in the classroom, he just wanted the world to know he had something to say. And so do millions of other children. When we talk about children's rights, about safety, education, health, love, it's easy to see it as someone else's issue. Something that happens in far off places to children we'll never meet, in situations we'll never experience. But that way of thinking that distance it's dangerous, because protecting children isn't just the responsibility of governments or charities or people who work in offices with big titles. It's a responsibility we all share, every single one of us. Children don't choose where they're born. They don't choose to be born in war zones or in villages without clean water or in cities where going to school means walking past danger every morning. They don't choose poverty or displacement or hunger, but they live it. And while it not being in our own neighborhood, that doesn't mean it's not our problem. We're all connected. Different countries, different languages, different faiths and cultures, but still connected. A child in Syria, in South Sudan, in a forgotten camp on the border of somewhere you've never heard of. That child has the same right to live, to grow, and to dream as any child in London, Manchester, or New York. The idea that some lives matter more than others, that some children deserve protection and others don't, that can't be the world we accept. It shouldn't be the standard we live by. When one child suffers, when one child is denied a future, the world is something. It loses talent, light, potential. And whether we see it or not, that loss touches all of us. I've traveled to places where children live with so little, yet carry so much hope. I've met parents who want nothing more than to keep their children safe, who walk for miles just to get clean water or stand in line all day for a bit of food. And I've seen firsthand how, even in the worst circumstances, a little support can make a huge difference. But that support has to come from somewhere. It has to come from people who care, people who refuse to look away, people who understand that what happens to a child on the other side of the world is just as important as what happens to one on their own street. This isn't about guilt, it's not about shame, it's about responsibility. Because if we have the ability to help, even in a small way, then we should. We live in a world with more resources, more technology, more information than ever before. We can communicate instantly. We can raise money in minutes. We can spread awareness with a single post. So the excuse of I didn't know doesn't hold anymore. We do know. And once you know, you can't unknow. You can't see the face of a child sleeping on the ground in a refugee camp and say, that's not my concern. We're all human, and being human means we don't get to decide which children are worth fighting for. All of them are. It's not about doing everything. It's about doing something, whatever that something looks like. Maybe it's teaching your own children about kindness. Maybe it's donating to an organization doing the work. Maybe it's amplifying the voices of those who are already fighting every day. Maybe it's simply starting the conversation. The point is, we're in this together. And if the next generation is going to have a better future, it starts with us taking responsibility, not just for our own, but for children everywhere. It's hard to stand the full scale of it until you see it with your own eyes. The truth is, for millions of children around the world, life isn't about toys or games or birthday parties. It's about survival. There are children right now, millions of them, who wake up each morning knowing where their next meal will come from. Children who haven't been to school in years because there simply aren't any schools left. Children who work long hours in fields or factories, not because they want to, but because if they don't, their family doesn't eat. And some children, they don't even get the chance to grow up. We live in a time where we have the ability to connect across oceans in seconds. We have luxury at our fingertips, food on demand, education on our screens. But at the same time, there are children walking for hours just to fetch water. Some walk barefoot under the sun just for a single jug that might not even be clean. And while we sit in classrooms and boardrooms talking about progress and policy, some children are sleeping in bombed out buildings. They hear airstrikes more than laughter. They know the sound of gunfire better than the sound of a bedtime story. In some places, girls are denied education just because they are girls. They're told their place is not in a school, but in a home, or worse, married off while they're still children themselves. Their voices are silenced before they've even had the chance to discover what they're capable of. There are children who've been torn from their families, forced to flee their homes because of war, persecution, or natural disaster. They carry trauma in their eyes, in their posture, in the way they speak, if they speak at all. And many of them have seen things no child should ever see. It's easy from a distance to reduce these children to numbers, to hear that over 150 million children are engaged in child labor, or that over 250 million live in conflict zones, and to feel detached. But these aren't just statistics, they're real lives. Each one with a name, a family, a heartbeat. Every time we scroll past an image of a malnourished child or a refugee camp, we're being shown a sliver of that reality. But it goes deeper. It's in the quiet suffering. The hunger pains that have become normal, the daily fear that school might not be safe, the knowledge, even at 5 or 6 years old, that the world isn't always fair, and that for some, it's never been fair. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the physical struggle, it's being invisible, feeling like no one sees you, feeling like the world has moved on while you're stuck trying to survive another day. There are children who carry the burden of being providers, caretakers, protectors of their younger siblings, because their parents are gone or unable, or simply trying to stay alive themselves. There's no childhood in that kind of life, just responsibility, just survival. We often talk about children being the future, but what kind of future are we building if we allow this reality to continue? How can we expect peace, growth, or progress when so many are left behind? These children don't want pity. They don't need us to look down on them or speak for them. They need protection. They need opportunity. They need someone to recognize that their life, their struggle, and their potential are just as valuable as any child's anywhere in the world. It's easy to get caught up in adult life, the meetings, the deadlines, the responsibilities. We move so fast that sometimes we forget who we used to be. But the truth is, no matter how old we are now or how far we've come, every one of us was once a child. We were all small once. We had scraped knees, wild imaginations, and fears that seemed bigger than the world. We had dreams, simple ones, sometimes to score a goal, to stay up late, to play a little longer outside before the sun went down. The most of us were lucky enough to grow up with a sense of security, a roof over our heads, a warm meal, someone to tuck us in at night. We might not have had everything we wanted, but we had what we needed. Think back to that time. Think back to how to have someone listen to you, to encourage you, tell you that you mattered. Now imagine never having that. Imagine growing up without safety, without care, without even the comfort of knowing your tomorrow might be a little better than today. For millions of children around the world, that's not imagination, that's their reality. But we forget that so easily because we've moved past it, we've grown up, we've built lives, and sometimes we think children should just be strong or get on with it. But strength isn't something you're born with, it's something that's built when you're supported, when you're loved, that when someone believes in you. When we look at children in need, whether they're in our own cities or on the other side of the world, it's important to remember that they're not different from who we were. They laugh the same, they cry the same, they hope the same. The only real difference is circumstance. No child chooses the life they're born into. No child asks to live through war, hunger, or abuse. And yet, they carry those burdens quietly, bravely, often without complaint, because they don't know any other way. We forget how vulnerable we were, how much we needed someone to fight for us when we couldn't do it ourselves. How every kind word or gesture left a mark, even if we didn't realize it at the time. And that's what makes this so personal. This isn't just about doing something good or ticking a box for charity. It's about recognizing a piece of yourself in every child who's struggling. Because if we had been born in different circumstances, we might have been the ones asking for help. We might have been the ones searching for safety, for warmth, for a bit of peace in a world that doesn't always offer it. Sometimes I meet children who remind me of who I used to be, not because of their situation, but because of their spirit. There's a look in their eyes, a mixture of curiosity and determination that feels familiar. And in those moments, I don't see a victim. I see a younger version of any one of us. The child who dreams, the child who wants to be seen, the child who just needs someone to say, I believe in you. And when we think about helping, when we talk about supporting children's rights, it shouldn't feel like something distant or abstract. It should feel personal, because deep down, we know what it feels like to be small in a big world, to need protection, guidance, love, to want to be understood. So when we see children going through things no one should go through, we shouldn't turn away. We should remember, we should feel it, because we were them once. Growing up, sport was everything to me. It was more than just a game. It was structure, it was purpose, and most importantly, it was hope. I remember spending hours in the park with a football at my feet. No fancy pitch, no big crowd, just me and the ball. That space, that freedom, it gave me something to focus on, something to believe in. And even back then, before any of the fame, before the clubs or the crowds, I knew what that all meant. It meant possibility for children everywhere. Sport can be that same lifeline. In places where there is war, where schools have been destroyed, where families are displaced and homes are gone, sport becomes more than an activity. It becomes a safe space, a football pitch, a playground, a court, even just a dusty field. It can become a place where kids feel like kids again. I've seen it firsthand. I've walked into communities that have suffered, where trauma hangs in the air like a shadow. And then you hear it, laughter, you see it. Children chasing a ball, shouting, falling, getting back up. For those few minutes, they're not defined by what they've lost. They're just living, just playing. Sport has a way of reminding us what's possible. It teaches lessons you can't always get from a book. It teaches teamwork, discipline, respect. It shows you how to win with humility, and just as importantly, how to lose with grace. For children in tough environments, it becomes a source of identity, a way to say, I'm good at something, I matter, I belong, and that matters. Because when you grow up surrounded by instability, by conflict or poverty, having even one area in life where you feel strong, that can change everything. I remember once being at a small pitch in a refugee camp. There was barely anything there, just some worn out goals made of wood and a ball that had been patched up more times than I could count. But the energy, the passion, the joy, it was as real as any Champions League match I'd ever been part of. Those kids didn't have boots. Some didn't even have socks, but they had heart. They had that fire you see in people who know that sport isn't just about winning, it's about feeling alive. That's why we can't overlook the role sport plays in building better futures for children. It can't be seen as a luxury or a distraction. It's a tool, an incredibly powerful one, healing for growth, for change. When a child steps onto a pitch or a court or a track, they're stepping into a space where the past doesn't define them, where for a moment they can forget about the things they've seen, the things they've lost. They're given a moment of peace, of clarity, of control. And for children who've grown up in chaos, that's rare, that's precious. Sport also builds confidence. It shows children that hard work pays off, that even if you start with nothing, with time and effort, you can improve, you can grow. That sense of progress, that feeling of achievement, it can spark a belief that carries into the rest of their lives, into education, relationships, leadership, into everything. It also creates community. Children from different backgrounds, sometimes even from different sides of a conflict, come together to play. They learn to trust each other, to support each other. In that way, sport doesn't just build individuals, it builds bridges. In some of the most divided places on earth, I've seen kids from opposing communities come together over a shared love of the game. For a brief moment, differences disappear. All that matters, the ball, the team, the play, that's the power of sport. One of the most powerful things we can do for children and for anyone really is listen. It sounds simple, but in a world that moves fast, where everyone's speaking, shouting, sharing opinions and trying to be heard, genuine listening has become rare, especially when it comes to children. Too often children are spoken about or spoken over. Their voice is getting the noise. But when a child speaks, whether it's with words or actions or even silence, they're telling us something. And if we're not listening, we're missing it. I've sat with children in places where life is hard, refugee camps, crowded shelters, remote villages, and the most meaningful moments were never the speeches or the ceremonies. They were the quiet ones. The ones where a child tells you about their dream of being a teacher, or shares the name of a sibling they lost, or simply asks you if you'll play a game of football with them. Those moments stay with you, because when a child chooses to share part of their world with you, they're offering something precious. And it's our responsibility to honor that by being fully present, by hearing them, not just with our ears, but with our hearts. Listening means more than just hearing. It means understanding what's being said, and just as importantly, what's not being said. A child who doesn't speak much might still be saying everything through their eyes, their posture, their silence. And if we care, we have to learn to listen to all of it. When children feel heard, something changes in them. You see it in their eyes, the way they light up when someone truly pays attention, not out of duty, not because it's the right thing to do, but because they care, because they want to understand